What is it about quitting smoking weed that makes quitting so challenging? And guys, I could say the same thing for the challenge in quitting drinking alcohol, the challenge in quitting taking pills, or the challenge in, quitting vaping or quitting smoking cigarettes. That's really the first question that we have to answer today before we jump into things. Realize when you're under the influence of a drug, whether we're talking weed, alcohol, pills, nicotine, everything in life is progressively more challenging or harder to do. When I was smoking a lot of weed, it was harder to get out of bed in the morning, to get up the next day, right? It was harder to focus due to all the constant brain fog that I was dealing with. It was harder to execute on physical activities, going to the gym, running, partaking in yoga classes. Physically, everything was more challenging for me when I was smoking weed, drinking alcohol, vaping, chewing tobacco. When you struggle with a drug addiction, the drug itself is the very thing that's making life seem so much harder than it needs to be. If my body's constantly being poisoned throughout the day, my lungs, my liver, my kidneys, my muscles, my mental health, obviously any activity that I go to do, whether it's as simple as brushing my teeth at night before bed, getting out of bed in the morning when my alarm goes off, or taking on a monumental task like trying to get sober, everything is progressively more challenging. So when people say, why is it so hard to quit smoking weed? Why is it so hard to quit drinking alcohol? The blunt answer to the question is that because everything is more challenging when you're under the influence of a drug. It's like putting one foot on the gas and slamming the other foot on the brake. Eventually, you're going to be running on fumes. And this is exactly the point in life that addiction brings most people to. Here you are trying to take on a monumental task, getting sober, starting your recovery process, and you're running on fumes because addiction inevitably burns people out. And it's when people become burned out, that's when they decide they're ready to quit. And then they say, well, quitting's so hard. Let me give you another example. If I was new to working out and physical fitness and I wasn't eating healthy and I've never been to a gym before and I didn't have a plan of like when I was going to go to the gym or what I was going to do, working out for those first few months would inevitably be very, very challenging, right? I'm not giving my body the nutrients it needs to thrive in the gym. Perhaps I know nothing about supplementation, and I don't have a plan to get to the gym. And then the first few times I make it, my muscles hurt, everything's sore because I don't have muscle. I don't have physical endurance. Quitting smoking weed is a very, very similar story. Same with quitting alcohol, same with quitting pills, same with quitting nicotine or tobacco products. Everything is challenging when you don't know what you're doing when you first begin, when you first take on the task. And this isn't something that you should be thrown off by. Now, there's two other reasons why. So how do you make it easier? Well, you stop doing the drug, you start to refuel your body, you start to refuel yourself. And by removing the very thing that's making quitting so hard, aka weed, alcohol, pills, nicotine, the process becomes easier. Now, there's two other reasons why, though, quitting smoking weed can be challenging. For some people, not for everyone here, for some people though, their purpose may have been lost along the way throughout their addiction journey. And when you're quitting smoking weed, you might be at a point in your life where you really don't have hobbies, where you really don't have solid relationships, where you really don't have a career or a business-oriented goal figured out for yourself, right? Maybe your finances are a mess. It's this lack of purpose, whether it's faith-based, whether it's relationship-based, whether it's business-based, entrepreneur-based, career-based. It's this lack of purpose that makes quitting difficult. Now, we often see this in younger individuals. I'd say that the most challenging time for this is somewhere between the ages of 18 to 25. This is where you don't really fully have your career figured out. You may or may not be in a committed relationship. And your only hobby has been drinking alcohol, smoking weed, getting high with friends. So now you stop using that substance, you stop doing this thing that's been a major part of your life, maybe since, a young age, since 16 years old. And the question now becomes, what's my purpose? I feel bored. I don't have anything to do. So that's another thing that can make quitting challenging, is a lack of purpose. Now, the last thing is a lack of a plan and a lack of support. Now, the easiest plan to quit smoking weed, I'm going to be blunt with you guys, is to just quit, to just stop cold turkey, make it non-negotiable. I quit. Under no circumstances am I ever going to go back to smoking weed again. And if you can get there mentally by the end of today's presentation, I promise you quitting is going to be 1,000 times easier. When you're all in on something, it's much easier than when you're wishy-washy, when you're 50-50. Oh, maybe I'm going to eat this, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm going to smoke this, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm going to switch my job, maybe I'm not. It's hard being 50-50 on things, but when you're 100% committed, it's much easier. Now, I was going to say though, it's easier when you have the support of either friends, family, someone else who's holding you accountable, maybe like an addiction recovery coach, or you could do AA, NA, MA, 12-step meetings. It's easier when you have some form of accountability, and it's even easier when you're working with someone who's been through it before, who's gone down that path. When I got into business for myself, when I first opened up my chiropractic offices that you guys are at here now, I didn't know what I was doing. And having a mentor made this process significantly easier. I was able to avoid some of, not all of, but some of the mistakes that my mentor helped me avoid. And getting sober is no different. So working with a sponsor, working with a coach, working with a licensed therapist or qualified professional who really understands addiction is only going to help you out. And this could be as simple as talking to a friend who's been through it before. But lacking support, lacking community is really something that's going to make this a very challenging situation, especially if all your friends smoke, especially if all your family smokes and that's all you're surrounded by. You have to start to change up that environment and the people that are going to be influencing you along your quitting smoking journey. And that applies to any drug. So main takeaway point though, why is quitting smoking weed so hard? Because everything we do under the influence of a drug is harder. Financially, our lives are harder. Making connections is harder. Finding the energy to get through day-to-day tasks is harder. The drug is the very thing itself that's making it so hard. So if you remove the drug, if you remove the substance, if you make that non-negotiable, I promise this process is going to be a lot easier. All right, let's jump right into it.